Located in Midtown Manhattan, Le Jardinier is a Michelin-starred restaurant that not only serves delicious but truly stunning-looking food in a beautifully designed dining room. The establishment also offers a somewhat affordable set menu for lunch, and I just had to try it.
Beautiful day here in New York City. Right now I'm at Central Park and I'm just enjoying some of the wonderful fall scenery. The leaves here are just amazing. Now most of them have already fallen off the trees, but still, Central Park in the fall is a magical place. Now speaking of magical, I went to a Michelin-starred restaurant for lunch where I had some very fine food. In addition, I may have just seen a CEO of one of the most powerful companies in the entire world who was also dining at the restaurant I went to today. For my lunch, I ate at Le Jardinier. In French, Le Jardinier translates to the gardener. Now that name is very appropriate since the restaurant puts large emphasis on vegetables as opposed to meat and fish. It's not a vegetarian restaurant, but vegetables are really the star of the plate. I wanted to go to Le Jardinier for a few reasons. One, I want to go to every Michelin-starred restaurant. Two, the pictures of their food on Instagram look absolutely stunning, true works of art. And three, well, I have a reason to celebrate. Yesterday, I just crossed the 20,000 subscriber mark on my YouTube channel, and I'm very proud of that. I really put a lot of time and effort into every one of my videos, so it really means a lot to me when people actually watch my videos. And with that being said, onwards to 30K. Anyways, this was my lunch at Le Jardinier.
Le Jardinier opened in 2019 inside a modern residential tower in Midtown Manhattan. The establishment comes from chef Alain Verzoli, who previously spent over 2 decades working for one of the world's greatest chefs, the late Joël Robuchon. In the 2020 Michelin Guide, Le Jardinier earned its Michelin star and has maintained it to this day. The restaurant has also expanded beyond New York City to open locations in both Houston and Miami. It even earned a Michelin star in Miami's Michelin Guide. I arrived to Le Jardinier on a weekday right as it opened for lunch. It's an absolutely beautiful restaurant. The establishment describes the space as a modern greenhouse, and that certainly comes across. I noticed that there was an odd sort of glass tube on the table, and I was curious as to what it could be, but soon after fiddling with it, I realized it was a light. Design-wise, it's clear that the restaurant was thought out in every respect, with an eye towards modernity and a visual aesthetic of the menu's ethos. Seasonality and a respect for produce is the guiding principle of Le Jardinier, and that certainly comes across in their selection of food. I was particularly attracted to the 2-course $58 executive lunch menu, and while that's not exactly cheap, it does allow one to save some money compared to how the courses are normally priced. Of course, only 2 dishes wouldn't be enough for me, so I did order a couple more items a la carte. In terms of beverages, Le Jardinier has a pretty solid wine list with offerings from throughout the world, but with the best selection being from France. Some highlights include a 2014 DRC for $18,500 and a 2000 Petrus Pomerol for $9,500. However, I just stuck with water for my lunch. First up was the bread, and there are 2 different kinds. Both of the offerings were certainly a step above than the typical plain rolls provided in many restaurants. They were both warm and fresh and had good flavor. I was also given some quality olive oil and butter to pair with the bread. While the rolls were pretty small, one could simply get more bread by asking. It was a nice start to my lunch. For my first course, I got a salad with chicories, a creamy Parmesan dressing, green apples, and pine nuts. While chicories may look just like lettuce, they are different plants. In fact, chicories have a slight but pleasing bitter edge. However, I doubt most people would notice much of a difference in flavor, especially with this salad, since the other components of the dish certainly make their presence known. The creamy Parmesan dressing gives a sense of richness, while the apples lend a pleasant sweetness. My waiter described the dish as being like a Caesar salad, but I felt that wasn't the best description, as there's a lot more to the course than the typical Caesar. It wasn't mind-blowingly good, but it was nevertheless a satisfying and delightful salad. I also thought that it was a pretty fair portion size, especially considering that I saw numerous photos of the Jardinier's food before my visit, and I thought many of those dishes looked somewhat small. All in all, it was a good salad, but it was time for the main course. I went with the wild Montauk bass with broccolini, a pine nut gremolata, and lemon. The presentation of the course was beautiful. One could clearly see how important the vegetables are to the plate as they lovingly cradle the fish. But the bass could certainly stand on its own as it was perfectly cooked. It was nice and flaky and had a crispy skin. However, the dish is really a success with the combination of all the flavors on the plate. That savory green sauce had so much flavor to it and took the fish to another level. The broccolini was pleasant and I enjoyed the pine nuts, even though I had a fair share of those in the previous course. Out of all the food I consumed at Le Jardinier, the bass was my favorite. However, it's clearly not the largest portion, so I paired it with a side. I got the grilled marble potatoes with nori and creme fraiche. It was decent, but I thought it could have been a little better. I appreciated the variety of marble potatoes in the dish, which lent unique flavors, but also an assortment of pleasing colors. The potatoes were cooked just right, but only became truly delectable with the addition of the sauce on the bottom of the bowl. It was a good, savory, and rich sauce, but I thought it could have been a bit more powerful. While I was eating, the dining room really began to fill up. To my surprise, I noticed that one of the customers looked exactly like Apple's CEO, Tim Cook. I always experience a moment of disbelief anytime I think I might have spotted a celebrity in the wild. I mean, shouldn't Tim Cook be somewhere in Silicon Valley? Between courses, I subtly looked up photos of Tim Cook on my phone to compare this individual seated at the other end of the restaurant, and they looked just like him. Still, I wasn't 100% confident that it was actually Tim Cook, but the experience did provide a bit of entertainment. After finishing both my main and side, it was time for dessert. While not as extensive as the dinner menu's dessert offerings, there are still some decent options available for lunch. The desserts are the product of executive pastry chef Salvatore Mattone, who is a true master of his craft. I knew exactly what I was going to order since before I went to Le Jardinier, I viewed a video of Chef Mattone creating the restaurant's warm apple tart, which was exactly what I chose. The dessert was stunning and a true work of art. A dizzying spiral of infused apple peels made up a gorgeous rose. While I've certainly had other courses that were fashioned to resemble a flower, Le Jardinier's example was among the most exciting. The dish consisted of Parisian flan, cacao nibs, and ginger ice cream. It tasted as good as it looked. The dessert was fantastic. The tart was baked just right and the creamy flavors inside were excellent. I also really liked the ginger ice cream. It was perfectly balanced and went nicely with the crumble. Now, it did feel a little sinful to dissect such a beautiful dessert, but the most important culinary artistry always comes down to the flavor, and the dish certainly tasted amazing. After finishing, it was time for the bill, which was presented in a very aesthetically pleasing way. My lunch set me back $95.81, but with my tip, I spent around $115. That wasn't cheap, but it was less than what dinner probably would have cost, and I did enjoy the food. From the cuisine, service, and decor, there's no question about it, Le Jardinier is a good restaurant.
So that was a pretty fine lunch. I really enjoyed all my food, especially that fish. Oh, that was delicious. And that dessert, wow, that was a work of art. Now, I do wish I could have gone for dinner. I'll definitely do that in the future, but it's clear the dinner menu is where the best food is at. I mean, some of those desserts, the really stunning ones, are not available on the lunch menu. But I don't have any regrets because I still enjoyed a fantastic lunch today, and there's still a lot of great options on that lunch menu. Now, if lunch is good enough for a billionaire like Tim Cook, it should be good enough for everyone. I'm not 100% sure that was actually Tim Cook. I'm like 90% sure. Either way, it was definitely someone who looked just like Tim Cook. Anyways, at the end of the day, I enjoyed a great lunch. The food was really good, the service was solid, and the decor was wonderful. I'll definitely be back to Les Jardiniers.